The bottom drawer of Sarah's filing cabinet with a key she'd hidden under her wedding ring. We found the life's work my wife had poured into protecting our neighbors. A folder labeled Karen, Federal Crimes, thumb drives with ledger files, copies of ballots from an HOA election that proved Karen had declared herself winner over Mrs. Samantha, bank statements highlighted like constellations showing exactly where the money bled each month. $2,847, again and again, a number chosen to hover beneath. Reporting alarms, and we found the worst note, the one that still burns when I say it. Karen offered to cover my cancer treatment if I dropped the questions. Threats in the margins, dates, names, a ledger of sap from good hearts. When we called Mrs. Samantha for coffee and cookies, she arrived with spreadsheets like a symphony, every bill since 2019, every discrepancy cross-referenced, the tidy math of a retired IRS auditor who knows what teeth look like when the wolf smiles. Pretty soon the board's vice president, Janet, and a half-dozen neighbors were on my porch carrying their own fracture lines. Cash bribes for violations, threats about fence, slats, mailbox paint codes, the psychology of slow terror, while Marcus diagrammed how federal jurisdiction grips interstate crimes, how shell companies hop across borders like stones in a creek, and how evidence becomes architecture when you build it out of timestamps and receipts and trembling voices that choose to be brave. We set up motion cameras because panic makes the guilty take risks, and within days we had video of Karen picking my lock with a credit card and tucking dime bags of white powder behind my refrigerator and into the disposal, baking soda, Officer Martinez's field kit would confirm. Then we found our tires slashed, our mover offered $5,000 by Karen to lose my shipment, our mail delayed on accident, our trash skipped with a wink, and our pizza mysteriously canceled on a Friday night, like I'd been placed on a menu of non-serviceable addresses. We learned she'd called Marcus's boss to allege bribery, called the FBI hotline to fabricate a conspiracy detailed it unraveled under its own weight, and called the local field office to demand his arrest, admitting, on a recorded line, that she'd taken pictures of agents and followed government cars. Still she doubled down, sending a second process server with a magnificent fake federal restraining order that crumpled under scrutiny, and by Sunday morning she struck with the cruelest trick, an emergency restraining order at county court claiming I'd attacked her with a crowbar, which deputies served. With apologies and instructions to save my security footage for the hearing, she reported Mrs. Samantha to IC with hateful lies about citizenship, tried to get Marcus flagged by Capitol Police as a violent threat, and even hired a trio of men in cheap suits to pretend they were U.S. Marshals seizing my home for federal forfeiture. But when I pointed out that marshals don't hire out to private firms called Peton Legal Services, and handed them coffee and a seat on the porch, their pride curdled into embarrassment, and they promised to report what they'd been pulled into. The restraining order was tossed by noon. When the judge watched my video of me not going anywhere near Karen, I apologized to Samantha, and even the fake marshals became unexpected witnesses. And then Karen made the fatal move, calling a press conference on her front lawn, cameras rolling, suit straight, voice syrupy with righteous fury, holding up my wife's neatly labeled evidence like victory flags and declaring those documents proved I had embezzled hundreds of thousands from the community, while the anchor's eyebrows rose, and the sun glinted off the word confession. None of us said out loud, because why spoil the ending? By evening, the community center's folding chairs were packed, the most attended HOA meeting in neighborhood history, news vans idling outside, little kids smearing fog on windows, 3 plainclothes agents sitting in the back, and me in the front row with Marcus, whose badge flashed when he stood, and Mrs. Samantha, whose spreadsheet stood taller than anyone there. Karen began with a sermon about conspiracies and criminals, and a contractor who corrupted a federal agent's son, and when she waved bank statements from Community Improvement Solutions LLC, Janet, the vice president, politely announced the board had voted for her removal, and Samantha rose with her phone to play a recording of Karen offering a $5,000 bribe, and Marcus introduced himself, Special Agent, Financial Crimes, and explained the charges already in motion: mail fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, interstate racketeering. Karen's eyes darted to the exits as Agent Williams approached with cuffs. The metallic click, so like that hateful padlock, rang to the rafters. and you could feel an entire community exhale, as if we'd been holding one breath for 8 long years. Applause broke like rain, and as neighbors asked each other, "Did you see? Did you know?" Agent Williams said the number aloud: 23 federal counts, 347,000 stolen, and promised coordinated restitution, asset seizures, audits that had already begun. Tom, the fence-fearing neighbor, apologized to me with tears in his eyes. Mrs. Patterson hugged Samantha so carefully you'd think she was hugging a glass angel. And the next week the story aired everywhere. Karen's orange vest against the blue and red swirl, the neighborhood clapping, the caption, "HOA fraud ring busted," while Marcus testified, and Samantha explained, "Trust but verify," on the 6 o'clock news, and I sat in Sarah's office, holding her last note with shaky hands. "Find Dalton. Tell him I love him. Make Karen pay." Months later, after the cabin finally welcomed my boxes, and the lake threw up its morning steam like an offering, after I brewed Sarah's favorite coffee and watched sunrise scratch gold into the water, the headline arrived: 8 years federal prison for HOA fraud queen. With supervised release and restitution north of $500,000, her sister Brenda pleading guilty to conspiracy and receiving probation. The shell companies dissolved, the cars auctioned, the money routed back into pool tiles and honest landscaping and refund checks that made old men cry at their mailboxes. Meadowbrook rebooted itself. Samantha as treasurer with transparent ledgers, Tom as president with monthly reports, and a voice that now shakes only from earnestness. Quarterly town halls with cookies and coffee, and kids drawing chalk hearts on the sidewalk outside. Sarah's files turned into training slides for new agents, her pattern recognition into a case study at Quantico, her handwriting into a legacy that made its way into committee rooms, where lawmakers passed audits into law. Sarah's Law. They're calling it in Texas, and other states copied it, because the story traveled like a lantern. I set up the Sarah Reed Memorial Scholarship for Cancer Research from the book and speaking checks people insisted on giving me, the first recipient a young scientist obsessed with early detection, and Samantha started free Wednesday classes on household finance, where she teaches people to read their HOA budgets like road signs, and to say, "Show me," when someone says, "Trust me." Across the country, homeowners peeked under their neighborhood rugs and found teeth, then stood up together